All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Best of Success podcast show. I'm Chris Gray, editor of Roofing Contractor Magazine and Roofing Supply Pro, and today I'm excited to be joined by Paul Disney, itel's Chief Product and Technology Officer. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Really excited to be here.
Awesome, yeah, thank you for joining us. And now, just right off the bat, just for those who may not be familiar, could you explain what itel is?
Yeah, I'm happy to. itel is a data software company that primarily sits in the property insurance space. We work hand in hand with carriers to ensure that as they're going through the claim settlement process, that they are working with the most accurate data around the pricing and identification of specific materials. itel actually started about 30 years or so ago, starting with identifying some of the specific aspects around carpets, looking for measurable aspects to where we could take in a physical sample and say, this sample is very similar to these other products that are available in your market, and this is an appropriate price to pay. And over the last 30 years, it's grown from identifying and appropriately pricing carpet to all sorts of other flooring materials, and then expanding into things on the exterior envelope, like asphalt shingles, like vinyl siding. So those are our pricing products. We also offer some advised products where we're really looking more holistically at a claim situation and giving advice, typically around, is this something that's able to be repaired or not? Sometimes we do that by looking at a specific material and letting you know if that material is available and thus the situation's able to be repaired. Think of like a shingle, right? You need to make sure you have the right shingle going on, especially in certain states where the DOI has regulations around matching. And then sometimes we look at the totality of a claim from a damage aspect. We do this both on the interior and the exterior of a home, and we weigh in on, is this situation, is it able to be repaired? Looking at the damage and looking at some of the other variables that go into deciding that.
All right, yeah, very cool stuff. And just along those lines, what would you say itel's data is showing about roofing repairs these days?
Yeah, so great question. I've been with itel for about 2 years or so, and ever since I've come in, the emphasis around what's going on with roofs in property insurance has been talked about a lot, right? Not just within itel, but within the market as a whole. Certainly from the time I've started, we've seen continuing storms all throughout America drive all sorts of property claims. And as we look at the information specifically with our what we call exterior advise, or that product that lets us get data around the totality of a claim, both through images and questions being answered by the user, by the individual on the roof, we're able to weigh in on, hey, is this roof able to be repaired or not? What we see with our own results is that the majority of roofs actually are able to be repaired. Now, bear in mind, we're not seeing our product run on every single roof. A lot of roofs are very obviously not able to be repaired, and most of our users are savvy enough that they're not going to take the additional time to run those through our product. But for those gray area roofs where maybe it could go either way, we actually see that the majority of those roofs are likely able to be repaired. That said, with the visibility that we do have to the ultimate outcomes, and this is not claims that are going through our product. This is all claims. We actually see that a relatively low number of roofs are actually being repaired in practice. Typically, it's somewhere around the 15% range, and that's kind of an order of magnitude number. But certainly, it's the minority of roofing claims that end up having a repaired roof at the end of the day versus a full replacement.
One thing I was hoping you could address, or maybe something you'd like to tackle, is maybe what one of the biggest myths are regarding repairs that maybe you would hope to dispel or at least examine a little further.
There's a number of different myths that I've seen, either firsthand from an adjuster or certainly on my online research. I would say the biggest one that I've run into is that If you have a full slope of your roof that needs to be replaced, then you just got to go ahead and replace the whole thing, right? Um, and that's just not the case. The reality is that uh, homes, many of them, have a lot of different slopes. My own home has 8 different slopes, and there are probably 2 of them that, if they were heavily damaged, you may want to replace the entirety of the roof. However, all the rest are relatively small, and a couple of them are really almost decorative. I mean, they're over dormer areas, and if they were to get damaged or have wind pull the shingles up or something of that nature, they would absolutely be repairable. Now, the challenge again is how you go about the strategy of doing that repair. And certainly, just saying it's repairable is different than saying it's as easy as replacing, right? Some slopes, even though they are relatively small, will require care as you're putting in the replacement area of the roof with what was already there, right? So this area that's being repaired, that's going to be fresh. How do you weave that into the undamaged area surrounding it? So it's not to say that it's easy, but it absolutely is possible, and it happens all the time. That's just one. There's a variety of them, but that's the one that I hear most often.
Yeah, certainly. And I think along those lines, you mentioned, maybe making repairs like around certain areas or damaged areas. There's also the mixing shingles. Sometimes maybe a shingle is discontinued, or maybe it doesn't have a one-to-one in the modern market versus when it was put on maybe 10, 20 years ago. I don't know if you can address that or just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, itel had a product in the market for years that's really around being able to identify what a specific shingle is. This is something that's available either having a physical sample where you take something and send it to our Jacksonville operation center, or leveraging a mobile processor, taking an image, and it gets passed along to those same subject matter experts in Jacksonville. But yeah, you're exactly right. There are certainly states that have pretty tight regulations around how closely a replacement shingle needs to be able to match everything else that's there. Um, we at itel have I won't say tried to solve this, but we have a solution that's helpful, that we call DMI, or discontinued materials. This is where we actually have a warehouse of shingles that have been discontinued. And for those carriers that want to have the option, they're actually able to acquire those shingles from us, even though they wouldn't be able to find them in the direct market. Certainly not something you would ever want to do to replace a whole roof. Again, these are discontinued shingles. However, it's perfect for the use case of moving forward with the repair. And there are still many roofs out there to where the core product might be discontinued. However, the roofing system as a whole is in good enough shape, and the appropriate thing to do is to move forward with the repair. So that's certainly a product that has been very helpful for a lot of our carrier users.
Absolutely. And with that being said, in addition to this maybe resource that ITEL provides, and do you have any thoughts on what contractors can do to train and to maybe recognize when repairs are viable versus replacements?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of restoration professionals do a pretty good job of this today, right? Certainly, there's some best practices. You want to make sure that you're getting a good look at the entirety of the roofing system, right? You want to do that due diligence and not just look at, the biggest slope on the house or the easiest slope to get to and say, oh, there's enough damage here to justify doing a replacement, because as we talked about, you really need to have a holistic view of all the different slopes of the house. Another great resource is to leverage something along the lines of aerial imagery. itel was actually acquired and is now part of a company called Nearmap. It's an Australian-based company that deals with property intelligence, and they've been flying planes over properties across America for over 10 years. It's a fascinating product, and as a product leader, I couldn't be more excited to be part of them, because we have some really interesting data that we can now play with and ultimately use to create solutions, not just for carriers, but also for restoration professionals. So thinking about it in this context, Chris, The age of a roof is incredibly impactful, right, to whether something is able to be repaired or not. And that's not to say that all old roofs are in need of a replacement. And it's not to say that a roof that's only 5 years old has weathered a really heavy storm effectively, right? However, it is an important variable, certainly, in the equation of is this roof repairable or is it not? So leveraging a solution like NearMap, we're able to sometimes be able to confidently speak to what a roof age is because you can literally see, looking at the aerial imagery, that the roofing system is different in 2014 than it is in 2015. Above and beyond that, it gives you visibility to things like how many slopes there are. It sounds like a simple one. However, when you're up on a roof and you're walking around and maybe getting distracted by phone calls or the homeowner, the policyholder is asking you questions from the ground, it can be an easy thing to actually, miss a slope or two, right? So going in armed with, hey, I have a 12 slope home. I need to check the box on viewing all 12 slopes. I've reviewed all the historic photos. Looks like the roof is it's at least 12 years old because I looked at all the images going all the way back to the beginning of when we have visibility, and it appears to be the same roofing system. Having that information in hand as you go to do your inspection can certainly lead to a better inspection outcome at the end of the day.
Now, we've been talking a lot about, repair versus replacement. If you could touch upon just what the impact of raising the repair rate would mean for the industry.
Chris, I love this question. With the visibility that I've had, it feels like many restoration professionals look at the business of doing a policyholder's roof, right? One that's going through a claim process, similar to how they would do it with a just general residential homeowner calling them up. But the reality is when we see these hard hit areas that get hit over and over and over, more and more often, they're being called out to look at roofs and maybe aren't very old and that maybe were built using shingles with a roof system that was meant to handle some of the weather that the home may have seen. So where I'm going with all of this is I think we're at a point where it would be more appropriate in some circumstances, in some areas, for roofers to lean more into doing repairs than doing replacement. Ultimately, if the business model for them can be set up correctly, I think it would be beneficial to them, right? From an outcome standpoint, you should be able to repair a lot of roofs more quickly than you would be able to replace it. From a policyholder standpoint, in theory, it should be less impact to the overall claim. In theory, it should be less overall impact to the amount of time you have them working and ultimately to a rate increase that you might see downstream. And then certainly there's benefits from the carrier standpoint because they're going to lessen the overall amount of indemnity costs that they have going into roofs. But Chris, to finally bring it full circle back to the question you asked, part of this has to be a recognition that it's harder to repair a roof sometimes than to replace it, or at least there's more intricacies to it, right? And so to me, there needs to be a conversation around, is it appropriate to have a higher rate for doing repair jobs to a roof? Can we help to shift things in the right direction? It's not incentivizing repairs when repairs shouldn't be done. That is not in anyone's interest. However, it is making it more worthwhile for a restoration professional, for a roofing contractor to want to take on a repair job. And to me, one of the potential really great outcomes for the roofing professionals is that they now are going to be able to work with more houses. They're going to be able to provide services to more individuals. These could be future customers. Certainly, it's the case for me and really everyone I know. When you work with a contractor that you enjoy the experience of, you want to work with that contractor every time in the future. So it's an opportunity for contractors to continue to expand their client base. And certainly there's opportunities for them to generate incremental revenue with potentially doing an annual roof check or something along those lines. So I think it's a great question. And I would love to see this be an area that the industry starts to shift more and more into recognizing that there's value in doing repairs, but there's also more challenges. And so we should raise the rates as part of that.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Very, very comprehensive answer. And because I know there's a lot of them out there saying like, oh, well, replacements are usually more profitable, but looking at it that way, it's almost a quantity over quality. Where if you can get out there and do more jobs, you can get out there and do more repairs, and maybe even market yourself as an expert who's willing to work with the homeowner versus just trying to sell them a roof.
That's exactly right. I mean, so much. Speaking personally now, as a homeowner for a number of years, so much of working with a contractor comes down to trust. And while yes, it feels great to have a new roof in a situation where maybe you haven't had one done in quite a long time, the reality is that a lot of the roofs being replaced now are roofs that aren't that old. And I have heard, legitimately have heard from multiple policyholders, confusion around why this roof that just got put on a few years ago needs to be replaced. I've heard sadness in all the material that's being pulled off that in theory could potentially still be in good shape. But again, that's not all roofs. Obviously, the newest roof in the wrong storm is going to need to be replaced.
Right, right.
But again, I think there's a general agreement that in order of magnitude, there are a lot of roofs that are being replaced that could be repaired. So, Chris, I couldn't agree more, and I do. I think the thing that I get most excited about with this conversation, with this part of the conversation, it's not again a conversation of how can indemnity cost be lowered, for the long-term health of the insurance industry. Although I think that's a very real conversation. It's really how can everyone involved have a better outcome at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but it's something I'm passionate about. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, no problem at all. And, appreciate all the insight you've given. But yeah, I think that was everything I was hoping to chat with you about, unless there's anything else you want to mention or where maybe people can find more information.
Yeah, so you can learn more about ITEL certainly online. ITEL Inc. ITELinc.com is the website, and certainly you can find ITEL at most industry conferences. I know we're represented in a number of ones that are specifically around the roofing industry. Yeah, I guess if I had a closing thought, it would just be how excited I am to use that term again, maybe at the risk of overusing it, about continuing to establish ITEL as truly being independent. Generally speaking, our customers today are insurance carriers, but we really do want to be that independent body that doesn't just help carriers settle claims more quickly, but ultimately helps restoration professionals and insurance carriers get aligned more quickly. Again, the best outcome is when the policyholder wins, and the policyholder wins more quickly when the adjuster and the restoration professionals are winning. We all need each other is the reality. And so I'm excited for ITEL to continue to establish ourselves again as that independent body that serves not just carriers, not just restoration professionals, but really serves ultimately the policyholder with helping claims be settled more quickly and more effectively. And I really appreciate the time. Thank you again, Chris. It's been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, and thank you for the same. Appreciate lending your expertise to us, and yeah, again, thank you for your time.
Of course. Take care.
Thanks, you too. Thank you all for watching or listening to the Best of Success podcast show. For more episodes like this, please visit roofingcontractor.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for our free e-newsletters to stay on top of the latest and greatest news.